Well, happy Friday, everybody. I'm Nick Slavik. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration Company here in New Prague, Minnesota. I'm also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live. It's a weekly live Facebook show where I use my over 2 decades of painting, restoration, colorist, love of old house experience to answer any of your questions live. Now, this is for contractors, this is for homeowners. I started the Ask a Painter over a year ago to answer a lot of my homeowner questions that I get. A lot of people were private messaging me, direct messaging me, asking about questions. I thought I'm going to put out an archive so people can search it. You can go to YouTube and find all my archived videos. You can go to the Ask a Painter Facebook page. You can go to my page, Nick Slavik on Facebook, Slavik Nick on Instagram. Search out all these episodes. If you want to find out anything that has to do with Ask a Painter, just type in the hashtag Ask a Painter, and all of the information will come up, starting with the most recent. Also, I started a new little program within a program here where if you guys want to see me paint something, finish something, do something, demonstrate something in the field, type in the hashtag Nick Paints It and give me your suggestion. And if I use your suggestion, you get one of those brand spanking new Ask a Painter t-shirts that have now been sent out to the field. They're now being worn by some of my crew and a couple other pros out there, and also the great education staff over at PDCA. So today we're going to be talking about caulk and everything you've ever wanted to know, at least as far as painting and restoration and residential and light commercial sort of stuff comes along here. The PDCA, the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America, has partnered with me. I reach all the homeowners, they reach all the best professional painters in the United States and beyond the world, and we marry those together, and hopefully this will become a forum for homeowners and for contractors alike to sort of share ideas. And contractors, this is a place where you can see what's on the minds of all the homeowners and homeowners. Here you can see the man behind the curtain, all the things that us pros think about. Yes, it's you call us and you say, you know, basically paint our house, but there's a lot of science, there's a lot of thought, and a lot of us contractors stay up late at night thinking about ways to make your house better and make you happy. So here it is. Today's PDCA contractor question of the week comes from Matt McHugh. He's a pro painter from Kitchener, Ontario. He owns Mateo Painting. He says, will you give me your take on caulking, types, uses, prep, application, the rundown? Give us a treatise. So, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to make this as quick as possible. This is not the most barn-burning topic to go through, but it does bring up a lot of questions. And at the end of this, I am going to I'll walk you through a scenario. I give a master's class on finishing interior cabinets and woodwork, and I said one of the most controversial things, unbeknownst to me, during one of my master's classes, and I'll tell you what that is towards the end of this here. So anybody interested in something very surprising and controversial that happened during one of my classes, I will let you know at the end of this. But why do we caulk? We do to keep wind, to keep water and bugs out of houses. At least I'm gonna talk about everything in a residential setting today here, and we're on a farm building today. So we do it to keep the elements out. Wood, hardy board, LP siding, masonite, everything expands and contracts. This is the little bit of stuff in between to make sure that, you know, hard surface to hard surface, corner board and siding, it's always going to expand and contract and move. This is the stuff that'll take up that tiny gap, hopefully an 1/8 inch or less, you know, to keep all the elements out. So types of different caulking. We have rubber caulking. One of the most frequent ones that I use are products like Lexel here. For rubber caulking, you'll find words like butyl, isoprene, butadiene, nitrile, any styrene sort of stuff like that. They stick to wet surfaces. This is a great thing. And shout out to my roofer friend, Kurt Lumberg, who turned this on to me years and years ago. Now when I build platforms, or I attach chicken ladders to roofs, or blocking to have a safe sort of egress up and down the roofs of houses, we have to either screw or nail or sometimes even attach my climbing harness to that. And when we penetrate the membrane of these houses, I want to make sure that it's sealed up. So if we can slide stuff under shingles, we'll do that. If not, we will screw through the front. When we're done with our rigging, we will clean out the hole, we'll dig it out a little bit, and we will put as much of this as will go in. We try to fill that hole all the way down. Now the benefit of this is I used some. He used this on a roofing project of mine, I believe, years ago, and he had showed me where he was sealing up some old parts on my old house, making the joints between the flashing and the shingles and the siding, and I was super impressed. This stuff stuck to wet wood, wet surfaces, wet shingles. It dries to a point where I don't know that with standard hand tools I could remove this from a house. This is the toughest stuff. This is basically a flexible super glue for basically anything around the house. Now, probably not a great idea to caulk your entire house with this if you ever need to replace siding, or it might even become too rigid for the siding, but it is almost impossible to remove. Stays slightly flexible, but it's almost impossible to get off a house. So this is my sort of go-to. This is about the only type of a rubber caulking that I use. There's a whole bunch of different applications for rubber roofs and gutters. If you have a leak in a gutter, you know, this will stick to a wet surface. But honestly, this is about the only sort of rubber caulking, or something that'd be classified under the rubber caulking. And this is a miracle here. This stuff is wonderful stuff, and in 24 years, I've never had a callback on a roof. So that would be the rubber. It's the most water-resistant product available. Sticks to wet surfaces, like I said, and it's solvent-based most of the time. Another benefit of this is it stretches without breaking. It's got two things called recovery and memory. So if you stretch something, it's depending on if it goes back or not, is recovery and memory. This stuff, you can stretch it, and it has enough memory where it'll go back to about its original size. So seasonality, like in Minnesota, you know, if you think about 6 months of very hot, humid summer, 6 months of very cold, dry winter, you know, you want that. Even if it goes like this for 6 months, 6 months later you want it to go back. And sometimes you'll even get that during a day. You know, it'll be 48 degrees during the day, 78 during the day, and on the south side of a house, you may get that movement all in a day. So that's about the only rubber I use. Water-based stuff. This is the most prevalent kind of stuff. You know, we've all seen the Alex Plus, anything that DAP makes. This is the most commonly available, you know, $2 to $3 tube of caulk without a contractor discount. Everybody uses it. It is paintable, which is the huge benefit. It is the most common. You know, we've all sort of seen versions of, you know, the DAP and things like that. It's a great product, and honestly, you know, I've used it for about 24 years. I've used the best stuff, I've used the worst stuff, everything in between, and honestly, this is one of those things like interior paint, where sometimes buying a $110 gallon of interior paint is overkill. Exteriors of houses, I cannot find a good enough exterior paint. Now, obviously, Sherwin-Williams makes you know, the Duration and the Emerald. Benjamin Moore makes the Aura. Those are awesome. If they made a $300 gallon of exterior paint that gave you $300 worth of value, I would use it in a second. Interior, it's very hard to find uses or to find enough value in a, you know, a very expensive can of paint. And caulking is the same thing to me, where, you know, if your house has to be maintained every 5 to 10 to 15 years like that, caulking is one of those things where as long as it doesn't completely fail and fall off, you can work with it. You can patch it, you can repair it, you can remove a little bit out of a time and replace it. So to me, you know, the difference between a, you know, $9 tube of caulk and the $3 or $4, I honestly have not seen a difference. Now, there's some new technology that I'll talk about later that might be different down the road, but that's sort of my take on that stuff there. But we all know the water-based stuff, super easy to use, super easy to clean up, tried and true for interior stuff, exterior stuff, all that good stuff. Silicone. This is the bane of my existence. Anytime I see silicone, I just shake and shiver. I just hate the stuff. Most commonly used by homeowners, uninformed homeowners on the exterior siding of their house, which is a complete disaster to deal with. It's you're dealing with complete removal. Used around showers, tubs, and still most most commonly used still to this date is countertop guys. They like to glue countertops down with it, and they like to seal the edges with it. Now, I don't know why they don't use a product like Lexel. The only reason I can think of is it might be hard to get off later if you ever needed to remove the countertop, but honestly, seeing most countertop people work, I don't think that's, you know, a concern that they're taking care of. Sadly, I think it's because a tube of Lexel might cost $8 and a tube of silicone might cost $1. And if that's the case, I'm very disappointed because you're not going to use more than about a tube or two on an entire project. You know, when somebody spends $18,000 on granite countertops, I hope that they're not using silicone instead of products like Lexel or another butyl thing, because it's, you know, the difference of $15. That would be very sad to me. So silicones are completely unpaintable. It does have a chemical in it called acetic acid, and acetic acid will actually deteriorate metal. So if you use it on galvanized tin, aluminum, ferrous metals, things like that, if you leave silicone there long enough, it does have that acid in there that will actually corrode it. And obviously if there's corrosion between the silicone and the metal, you're going to get delamination, and it's not going to do its job. So it tears very easily. It cannot be repaired. So if you use silicone around your countertop or your tub and it maybe separates a little bit, you could try to put more silicone in there. It really doesn't stick to itself. It's a very anti-stick property when it goes onto itself like that. It adheres the most poorly to wood of all the sort of caulking and sealing substances that we have here. An interesting property of it, though, it's inorganic. It's unaffected by UV. Mold can't grow on it, although all of us have seen sort of 100% silicone, around tubs and things like that have some mold on it. I assume that's just surface stuff where we get organic properties, oils from the skin, soaps, things like that on top of the silicone, and then the mold grows on that. That's the only reason I can think of where you see the dark mildew around tubs, because it's certainly not the actual silicone that's mildewing. Okay, polyurethane. All builders, at least in my area, are huge fans of, I think everybody pretty much knows what silicone is. It's just cheap. It's usually clear, sometimes white, sometimes another color, but basically simple. This is the most frequently used polyurethane product around here, Vulcum. And I see this on just about every single job site when things are being remodeled or new. In fact, I have never seen a contractor in my area use like an Alex or an Alex Plus or any other DAP product like that, at least when they're doing new construction. So polyurethane smells horrible. Sometimes it's chunky, sometimes it's smooth. It basically ruins all your clothes, everything it touches. Very difficult to clean up. But surprisingly, this is a really good product, and probably something painters once in a while should use. Now, it does stay softer and malleable for longer, so that's always a concern, especially here spring and fall when it gets a little bit cool. You may run into some days where this just doesn't dry very fast, whereas opposed to the water base will dry a little bit quicker than this. But this is actually a really good product, and it dries very, very rigid, and it's very hard to get off if you've ever tried removing it from any new construction. So, that's it's an interesting product. If you haven't used polyurethane before, give it a try. It's a very fun product to work with. It's a very quality product, and probably something painters should use a few more times. All right, and polyurethane, I should mention, is the only sealant that's actually resistant to abrasion. So if you're mechanically sanding next to it, if it's in a high traffic area, things like that, if that's a concern, it is also the most durable of them. So now there's also some new hybrids out there. DAP makes some products like that. There's one that called Sidewinder from DAP, and it's a new product. And if you think about all the new advances in trim paints, the Benjamin Moore Advance, the Sherwin-Williams Emerald, and Pro Classics Hybrid, there's a large trend to hybridizing our coatings and sealants now, where we want the benefits of a water-based sealant. We want the low odor, the low VOC, the quicker drying time, environmentally friendly, easier on the homeowners, but we want the durability and the UV resistance and other qualities of a polyurethane or an oil-based something. So just like Benjamin Moore Advance is an emulsion, think of salad dressing, oil and vinegar. It's an emulsion of a oil molecule surrounded by water molecule, and they get the chemistry right. So at just the correct time when everything's ready to dry out, the molecule actually unfolds and the water evaporates, and then you're left with your oil enamel, in theory. And the same thing with some new, I have not been able to get my hands on this. This isn't available to me within the 20-mile radius of where I live, but there is a new hybrid caulk where you basically take the benefits of a polyurethane, put it with the benefits of a water-based, and that's what you get. And if that's the case, and if the theory and the thinking behind that works as well as the hybrid trim enamels, that's something that I'll probably move to in the next year here, depending on how I see it works out. Because as we know, some of these things work out very well, and some of them don't, and we kind of have to just wait and see. They're given to us, and we assume if they come to market, they're good. 90% of them are, 10% are complete disasters, and it's kind of left for us to figure it out. So, failure. Basically, there's only two two major ways that caulk will fail. There's 3 ways it can fail, but there's really only 2 ways that actually show up in real life. There is the adhesive failure. The bond between the caulk and the wood just fails. It just comes off. Nothing happened to the caulk, nothing happened to the wood, but they just separated. There's cohesive, where the caulking actually tears. So if it's adhered good to one surface, adhered good to another, and they separate or move, and that caulk tears, that's cohesive failure. And then there's substrate failure. I mean, obviously, if we caulk and prime and paint and everything, the outside of a house, they have a huge water leak inside, water and mold and everything penetrates from the inside, that's just a complete failure of the substrate. Or if your substrate hardy board comes into contact with water, it'll shale or delaminate. It may have nothing to do with the caulk. It may have something to do usually with human error, as I found, is most of these materials, most of these caulks, most of these paints all work really well. It's when you get humans involved, magically sometimes things go wrong. So we're usually the weak link in here, and I usually default to humans being the problem. The 2 ways, I contacted a few companies for this, and I kind of asked them if there's any, because I have a very narrow window. I only see what I do, so I contacted a few companies and I sort of queried them, like, if something goes wrong, what is going wrong? Because they deal with a lot of homeowners, and they sort of echoed what I've seen over the last 2 decades, where somebody picked the wrong product, silicone on the outside of the house, or it's improper prep. And almost every time a professional painter does something wrong with caulking, it's improper prep. And the best piece of advice I can give any homeowner, any pro, is, for the love of God, prime your siding, prime your wood, prime your plywood, prime anything before you apply caulk to it. There will be a 10-fold return on that investment. I've seen some new construction, some houses where cedar siding was put up, T111 plywood, things like that. The contractor, dutifully had gone down all the seams, corner boards like this, and caulked them all. And when I came to paint, basically you come up and you see a loose piece, and you basically just zip it right off the house. It comes off in one big line. It just doesn't adhere to wood very well. If you're lucky, it'll soak into the wood a little bit. But if it's a fairly non-porous surface, that stuff will come right off. If it doesn't come off right away, it'll come off in a couple years. Definitely, when that wood starts moving, the second it moves, that adhesive or that sealant has nothing to really grab onto, and it'll just delaminate and come right off. So you get one of those adhesion failures that we had talked about a minute ago here. So that's the best thing I can tell you as far as exterior caulking, things like that. I'll kind of run you through my setup. Anytime that we caulk a house, this is the basic setup I give one of my apprentices. We have a rag. I like them in some sort of convenient shape like this, and I'll grab the camera and show you here in a second. But I tuck that into my belt, so you have a bunch hanging over the front of you, almost like a little apron. I have the holster. This is always helpful for when you're up on high ladders. That's got the nice belt clip here. That'll go on the belt. Again, there are $29 caulking guns out there, and there are $2 caulking guns. The $6 ones, I find out they work really, really well. Anything dripless like this, this one happens to be a newborn. I see these all over the place. These are the most readily available to me. Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moore, Hirschfield's, all the big box stores, my Ace Hardwares, everybody has these, and with my discounts, but $5 or $6 give or take. And they're wonderful. I get years of service. I mean, I still have some of my original ones from 10 years ago, my yellow ones, that are still going today. Some have taken falls off ladders and not fared so well, but in our trade, you really can't get a better investment than $6 for 10 years, give or take. So, and these conveniently have the, I'll get my thumb out of there, have the little clipper right there. So, new tube of caulk. Some people do angled, some people do straight. I'm a straight man myself. I like to do the smallest possible tip you can possibly do, because you can always squeeze out more. If you have a big pencil size opening like that, it's very difficult to do some fine work here. So we can chalk this thing up like this. If you're using, I got my old tube here. This is actually a really interesting product I'll go over later, glazing. But if you have a tube that's previously used like this, there's a reamer attached to all these, and you basically just get out the old stuff and then proceed. So, building here like this, this is a little bit different than normal lap siding. This is car siding. and this is almost flush with the outside here. This is a farm building. Normally you would have a nice 1/4 inch, sometimes even a 1/2 inch reveal here. I'm a big fan of, you know, there's a bunch of little hairline cracks here. I like to get in those and fill those as well, only if I can get them flat. The last thing you want to do is leave a big, you know, smudge with your thumb like that, because that'll definitely translate into the finish of it. So basically I always work top to bottom. I'm just going to do a couple here. When I do tool the caulk with my fingers, I like to go down and then I like to go up, especially to get this here. So I'll kind of angle this down here. All right, so we got the rag hanging out of the belt like this. This is to wipe your finger on after you get done tooling the caulk like this. Instead of wiping it on your pants, you just wipe it there. We got the holster going. And I'll just do a couple boards here. And you want to keep the minimum on there as possible. You can always add more later. If you put too much on, you'll just be dragging around with your thumb and you'll have to wipe some off. Okay, so we go down. And then we go up. Hit a few of those horizontal cracks like this. Yeah, and that's basically how you want to see it. There's a couple hairline cracks like this. I'm a huge fan of filling those with paint. Paint filling the cracks of something is going to be way more long lasting than a caulk. So that's normally how I go about those, like that. Let's see, a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Application above 40 degrees, obviously, for most water-based stuff. Some silicones and things can go into you know, below freezing sort of temperatures like that. But if you're outside and you're using silicone, it better not be for painting. It's a horrible situation, and if you ever see anybody using silicone on the outside of their house, please just slap it out of their hand. It takes about a 3-day cure in average temperature for something like this. And you should basically never go, the consensus between most manufacturers is about a 1/2 inch, which to me is actually a pretty big gap, and I normally wouldn't attempt that, only because, you know, like this stuff here, you want to get it fairly flat, because it will, when it dries, it'll suck in a little bit, you know, where something will be, we got a bat up there, it'll actually suck in. So if you have a crack like this and you level it off, there will be a tiny little bit of shrinkage when you do something like that. So for this stuff, it's okay. Let's see, something else I thought I'd bring up too is this window glazing that I use too. I've been experimenting with this for about 5 years now, and obviously for those of you who've been following me long enough, you understand I'm kind of an old school guy. I like to do things the traditional way if possible. This stuff is surprisingly good and surprisingly mimics the old style window glazing, where, you know, you roll up the putty to make it malleable, you snake it out like that and press it into the window when you replace glass. This stuff works surprisingly well. It goes on real easy. It's a little bit looser than the old school putty, so you can smooth it out with a tool like that. It's a little easier than doing the old, you know, the putty, the hardcore putty, the old kind of clay putty like that. So if you've not tried some of this stuff, kind of interesting, give it a shot. For the old school purists, you know, you can take a lot of pride in doing the windows yourself with that stuff. I've done both, and honestly, they both perform about the same. They still take a long time to cure. This one actually dries a little bit quicker, and they still stay malleable for a long time. So honestly, I haven't had to go redo a window that I've done in 10 years, but you know, we'll check up on that, and if I see any issues with that, I'll let you know. But otherwise, it's worth a try for you restoration pros out there doing that. Okay, I told you. There was something I said very, very controversial about this subject during one of my master's classes about finishing interior cabinets. It had to do with cabinet doors. Now, I don't think I have a cabinet door out here, but if you think about the standard raised panel cabinet door, you have rails and stiles. Those are the skinny pieces around the edges here. Oh, and everybody, thanks for watching. If you got questions for me, type them in. I will scroll through those down towards the end here, but in a raised panel cabinet door, when you have rails and stiles around the outside, then you have your panel inside. I said this, and this people came out of their seats when I said this, super nerdy paint stuff, but I said don't ever caulk those panels of cabinet doors like that. Now aesthetically, you know, that's the only reason we do it. It doesn't benefit the cabinet any, but the homeowner says, well, I can still see a black crack, can you just fill that for me? And almost everybody does. Now, this is a complete disaster. Don't ever, ever, ever caulk cabinet doors like that. Now, it does fill the crack, but if you know anything about furniture making, cabinet making, things like that, which I'm an amateur fan of, that panel, its formal name is actually a floating panel, and it floats because there's grooves in those skinny pieces of wood around it, the rails and stiles. There's grooves in there where that panel floats in there, and when you have seasonal movement, winter, summer, humid, dry, things like that, that panel, because it's natural wood, expands and contracts. You can even see this with HDF, high density fiberboard, medium density fiberboard, particle board. I've seen it in all sorts of substrates. If you caulk that panel like that and it moves seasonally, that caulk will come off of whatever you put it on there. Now, especially if you've caulked right over bare varnish or lacquer, that will delaminate quickly and you'll have an adhesion and cohesion problem with that. The worst case scenario I've seen of this. Now, I vehemently am opposed to this only because I've seen enough examples of this where a painter came in, painted somebody's cabinets over the course of 5 or 6 years. You know, the panels have moved and this caulk has broke away, and for anybody who knows what happens when caulk or sealants kind of break away, it gets weird and gummy. It isn't flat and then makes a nice little crack. The panel will come back and it'll actually mushroom up a little bit, and it's a complete disaster. Now, yes, it's just one tube of caulk and a couple cabinet doors, but if you've invested all that time into a set of kitchen cabinets, there's really not a great way to fix this. You can go back and strip them all and try to get all this stuff out of here, but the edges there are delicate and you may, you know, change them. Worst case scenario, you caulk all the cabinet doors in a kitchen and you will basically be buying them a $20,000 to $30,000 kitchen over again, or at least getting all new doors made, you know, to the tune of probably 8 or 10 grand. So please just do not do that. And I know it's a common thing. My fix for this, I explained this to the homeowner about the floating panel, and they basically understand. If somebody just says, no matter what, Nick, I understand what you're saying, fill that crack, I actually take the enamel that I was using with a brush and fill it in by a brush, and for the meantime that will fill it in. And like I said before, better to fill a crack with the actual paint than with the caulk, because the paint will just basically make a hairline crack when it does that. Not a lot of times will it actually mushroom back up and do that. I never caulk the horizontal cracks in siding like this unless there's basically a piece of siding missing and the homeowner doesn't want to replace it. I will fill it basically to just stop physical water coming in, but I always brief them that, you know, this is not really, the siding needs to expand and contract. If water gets behind it, it needs to weep out from underneath these clapboards. So we really shouldn't seal them. If you want me to, you've been briefed and I'm fine with doing it. We talked about cabinet doors, trim. Let's see, yeah, so interior trim, I use tons of this stuff. You know, we use 2-3 cases of this on the average house. We do the cabinet boxes, you know, where it meets the walls and the crown molding, things like that. Fairly immobile, mostly particle board, mostly plywood. You're not going to get a lot of movement there. Other than that, you know, the trim is a wonderful thing inside the house when you fill all those gaps. Surprisingly, and something interesting to me, that I'm finding a lot of high-end homes around here get pre-finished trim and they never seal up the crack between baseboards and casings and the walls and things like that. So something that I always took for granted, again, one of those things that I just assumed everybody did was sort of the industry standard. Turns out it doesn't really happen a lot. It's kind of interesting. I understand why with new construction and all that, but I don't exactly agree with it. So all right, let's scroll through some comments and questions here. Thank you all for watching today. If you like this stuff, share it. Go to my page and follow me, and every time I go live you'll get the updates. Raphael, thank you for watching, my friend. He was actually at my master's class for cabinet finishing, and he'll probably back me up on the super controversial caulking statement there. Phil Kirkup, thanks for watching. Sam Chung from the Sherwin-Williams store, thank you so much for watching, my friend. Terry Fleming, appreciate all your interaction. Luis, thank you for watching. Terry, been on a Benjamin Moore introduction course today in the UK. It's the best over there. And I will tell you what, I hope you guys can get Advance and Aura exterior out there. If you have not used those, Terry, do yourself a favor, and if you don't end up using them regularly, at least you know they're a tool out there. Super good product, and if you can get your hands on any of the traditional Impervo stuff like the oils, you will not be disappointed. And let me know, Terry, how that goes. Juanita, thanks for watching as usual. Hiwa, thank you for watching. Curtis, we spoke at length at the last expo. It's always good to talk to you. Todd, thank you for watching. Andy Kubish, great local carpenter here. Terry Liuski, works for one of the best companies around, Scott Equipment here. Wonderful people to work with. Thank you for watching as usual. Curtis, awesome info, Nick. Thank you. Chad, another local paint pro here. Thank you for watching. Wendy Slinkard, grew up a couple blocks away from each other. Thank you for watching. Tim Marcellet, one of the best realtors in New Prague here. And again, surprise, surprise, he's got time in the middle of the day of his busy realtor business to watch. Cherry Almond Jelly, thank you for watching. James Gilbert, interaction's always fun. Jeff Morrow, local flooring guy, thank you for watching. Jim Barrett, my good friend from Florida. The whole Barrett family, you guys are awesome. I actually went down there to visit them a couple years ago. Tyler Hansen, thanks for watching. The great and powerful Chris Shank, heading up the ed department there, growing out his hair. Freddie Spear, thank you for watching. Rob Morris, another local fella. James, I use All Pro Stretch Acrylic Urethane Elastomeric Sealant on my trim. All Pro, I think that's sold by Hirschfield's, at least around where I am. James, let me know where you get that stuff. I'd be willing to give that a shot. Oh, there you go, local Benjamin Moore store. My Benjamin Moore store happens to be my Ace Hardware. A lot of those are partnered here, so I'll see what I can do to get my hands on some of that stuff. And if I remember right, All Pro is a sort of a cooperative of sort of paint prep, wallpaper tools, things like that, and I think they sell them as packages. At least around here, we have a local chain called Hirschfield's, awesome paint store. I think they sell them through those, so I'll see if I can't track that down. Tristan Tripp, thanks for watching. Tom Shepard, Julio Diaz, thank you for watching, my friend. Rob, as well, as usual, Rob Grant, always fun to see you. James Gilbert, no angle. No angled. Oh, you're an angled guy. Yeah, I think that would be a fun poll, James. And if you're on any of those other boards, maybe you should start a poll to see who are straight people and who are angled people. I'd be curious. I've always been a straight cut person, only because I like to dictate, you know, depending on what I'm actually caulking. I always like to dictate the angle myself. You know, like when you cut it at an angle, every time you pull this guy out of your holster here, you kind of gotta index it like that to go to the wall. I like just pulling it out and knowing that it's always going to be at, you know, the 35-degree angle or whatever. So Matt McHugh, who gave us our PDCA contractor question of the week today. James, there should be a license to operate a caulking gun. I'm sure they'll take care of that right after the parental license in order to have children. Andy Chadwick, a good friend of mine, thank you for watching. Matt, awesome video, Nick. I'll be trying the glazing product in a tube. Yeah, it's really good stuff. And you know, for a restorationist like myself, it's almost sacrilege, but my God, can you knock out some old historic windows with that stuff. So Matt Bearbach, another local fella, thank you. Curtis, I missed the name on that caulking tube for the glazing. Okay, it's DAP, and I think it's just called, sorry, everything's going to be mirror image here, but latex window glazing. And this one just comes in. The only one I've ever been able to find in is white, and I can't imagine why it would come in another color. But it comes in a paper tube like this. It's got that kind of interesting spout that helps you kind of lay out a flat angle, and really, really good product, and super inexpensive too. I mean, it's it really speeds up your day. Let's see what we got here. Mateo Painting, Matt McHugh, thank you for sharing, man. I do appreciate that. Jim Callahan, good friend of mine, past apprentice, charter member of the hashtag Mug Club, and somebody I just painted his house. Ryan O'Neill, one of the best realtors in the United States. I keep seeing your name pop up, that, and another local guy too. So Ryan, thank you for watching. Ella Etlin, thank you for watching as well. So everybody, I really appreciate it. I need some topic suggestions for next week's show. What do you guys want to know about? It can be entrepreneurship, business, accounting, marketing, estimates. It can be coatings. It can be historic restoration. It can be color consultations. Whatever you guys want to see, you let me know, and I will prepare a treatise for you on that. So get all your questions here. You can leave questions after the show. You can leave questions during the week for me. thank you to the PDCA for putting up with me and all this sort of super geeky paint stuff that I do. It's been a great partnership so far, and we've connected with so many interesting pros all over the world. You can see even today here, we got some of my Brazilian pinturas chiming in. We got England coming in, and I've had a lot of fun corresponding with a lot of painters from all over the world. So thank you guys so much. Happy Friday, and we'll see you guys next week.